1977 saw the publication of the Dungeons and Dragons box set, written by J. Eric Holmes. It was meant to be an introduction to original Dungeons and Dragons for the masses, while also making wholesale changes to OD&D. What became known as the Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons became its own thing, and it happens to be the inspiration for issue 15 of the old school Renaissance zine Fight On. And I will have my review of issue 15 right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I jump into today's review, I do want to mention if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG, and to do so, just visit thegaminggang.com. Click on one of our banners, and if you happen to make a purchase, I'll get a small percentage of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It is absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Today, I'll be sharing my review of issue 15 of Fight On, which is from Fight On Publishing. This 102-page softcover zine can be had with PDF over at DriveThruRPG for $13.99. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so for $4.99. This past week, I actually shared first looks at issues 15, 16, and 17 of Fight On, because those are the issues that have come out since the zine has returned to the scene. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got issue 15 of Fight On. A few things I want to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Fight On Publishing were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the zine, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there are adventures contained within. I'm going to stay mainly spoiler-free as far as those go, but keep in mind, just as I flip on through, it is possible as a player, you might see some things that ruin some of the surprises of these adventures. So just keep that in mind. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a peek at our credits page. So all this information right here for us. If you're not familiar with Fight On, it originally appeared during the fledgling days of the old school Renaissance or old school revival, or whatever you want to use as the R in OSR. And it really did help propel the movement forward. There are many of the early issues of Fight On, which are really well regarded, especially with some of the adventures contained within. Now, there was a break for a while. There were no new issues of Fight On up until 2024, and that is when Fight On returned. I got to say, I have always been a big magazine fan as far as role-playing games. I used to pick up Dragon, of course. Every once in a while, Dungeon. I wasn't as big a fan of Dungeon as I was of Dragon, but I would get Shadis and Challenger and Different Worlds and just about every house organ that might have been out there for the various different companies. So I guess you could say back in the day, I was a zine fiend, to be honest. So I always enjoyed reading through various different zines. Didn't matter if it was something that covered just everything under the sun or if it was devoted to a specific game or a specific genre. Now, of course, Fight On is aimed towards the OSR, and this issue does focus on the Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of the articles, a lot of the NPCs, the monsters that are included in here are statted for the Holmes edition of D&D, which essentially means that you can really utilize it with just about anything out there. So I would say that this is pretty much kind of a hodgepodge for this return issue with some adventures, which are pretty cool. I do like the adventures. We do have a new race that's available, or even race as class, and it is the Gremlin. So we've got the Gremlin here. We'll have some new spells. We've got some new magic items, some new NPCs. I guess one of the columns that's going to be in Fight On is Knights and Knaves, which is going to introduce various different NPCs for the OSR. And these two NPCs that are included in this issue were actually part of J. Eric Holmes's own campaign. So I thought that was pretty cool. And there's actually quite a bit of reference to J. Eric Holmes's own homebrew campaign, which I thought was very, very cool. As far as the adventures go here, they are probably, in my opinion, the main selling point for issue 15 because they are quite well done. There are a couple right off the bat that I thought were exceptionally good. We're taking a look at one of these right here, and it's got sort of this spider pope, I guess I would say. Very interesting as far as this goes. And then our first adventure, I'll go back real quick, is actually really nicely presented. Look at the map there. Very, very well done. And I believe that Samora is going to be an ongoing campaign setting for some of the adventures that we are going to run across. Now, every article, every entry in issue 15 does not necessarily knock it out of the park, but I will say that this is a very entertaining read, even if some of the material that's at hand isn't going to be used at your game table. For the most part, I enjoyed reading through everything that's in here. Very, very nicely done. It's great to see Fight On return. Now, granted, of course, this issue came out back in 2024, but this past year, we had 2 fresh issues, which I have already shared first looks at. I will have reviews of in the not too distant future. But I do want to give you a peek inside because this is just absolutely packed with content. There's not a ton of fluff. There are some articles kind of talking about the history of the Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons, but they're, not even a page in length. So they don't take up a lot of the page count here in issue 15. We even wrap up with a scenario for chainmail. I was like, wow, that is really cool. Okay, so that is a peek inside issue 15 of Fight On. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Well, I guess it's pretty obvious. I enjoyed reading through issue 15 of Fight On. I'm really happy to see that this OSR zine has returned, and it's returned pretty much at full strength. Now, I will point out issues 16 and 17 are longer. There is more content in those issues, but still, this clocks in at 102 pages, and there's not a ton of wasted space. Sure, there's some ads here and there, and of course, not every article is a home run, but for the most part, It really is chock full of really fun, really interesting, really old school themed content. And I think that's one of the big selling points you're going to find with the return of Fight On. It's not just 5e adventures statted for an old school Renaissance retro clone. No, these are old school minded adventures that are contained within, and that is very, very important. So there is some weirdness, there is some gonzo-ness going on with the adventures, and I dig that a ton. Now, that might not be for everyone out there, but then again, the old school Renaissance isn't necessarily for everyone out there either. Gotta say, very impressed with this return issue of Fight On. I will be sharing reviews of issues 16 and 17 in the not too distant future as well. But as far as issue 15, I give it, on a scale of 0 to 10, a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. May not necessarily use everything that's in this issue, but it is chock full of OSR goodness. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, as long as you indicate all notifications, you'll also find out when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for our latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.